weekend. George Russell actually saying yesterday that he felt they could have gone a little bit further, could have gone maybe to 7.
So that is your peak recharge allowance. Let's have a look.
Yeah, he blocked me in the end of the lap.
Yeah, didn't look great.
I think he was just trying to get out of the way, but a little bit close to 130R, and Valtteri not ready for it as Hamilton continues on. So your peak recharge allowance, I said it's 8 megajoules. It was due to be 9, as you said. But so that means that there's going to be less recharge allowed. So teams are going to have to be more careful with their deployment and have a little bit less to use basically around the lap, because they're not going to be able to recharge. So it'll make it less extreme, and that's what George was mentioning. If you made it 7, we'd all just basically go a little bit slower, but we wouldn't have these massive recharge zones. If we stay with Hamilton down this straight, we'll see it. You can see the battery going down, 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 down. That's how quickly it goes. Now you're at the bottom of the pack, nothing left, and you're just slowing at this point all the way towards the braking zone.
Hamilton on to improve upon his time and on Gasly's time. He's having a little battle with Pierre Gasly. Final turn of the racetrack, and he comes across the line. And it's a 1:31.056 for Lewis Hamilton, who is running on that soft tyre. Yesterday, said the pace and the balance not quite there. Slightly tricky day. The car didn't feel bad as a baseline, but it wasn't where they wanted it to be. He said there are areas where we know we can do better, including deployment. Again, that's where they're going to first.
30.1 was the pace from Piastri yesterday. So as a reference for where we're at today, that's Hamilton on a soft tyre 31.0. Hey, the world orbits deployment, doesn't it? Deployment and harvest now is such a key differentiator. So I mentioned before, half a second, Antonelli was down on Piastri into turn 1. It's monstrous that you can have that loss with the same power unit. They're both running the Mercedes, and yet the deployment, just the way they're using it, is give and take, and it's amazing. Of course, what that means is Piastri then gets to a very low level, or next to 0 with his battery when he gets down to the first corner, and then he's having to recharge through the S's a lot more, and Antonelli has better deployment for the rest of the lap. So into Degner, you've got a little gain for Antonelli. Into Spoon, you've got a little gain for Antonelli. And then you've got a big gain for him down to 130R as well, where Piastri's not able to harvest. And here we go, that's right now, bang, half a second, Antonelli up the road with the same power unit. Now Leclerc, as we watch him launch one up in the on the soft tyres as well. Flat out through 3 with a bit of harvest. The car really still on the edge early on. It's a nice balance, that. It's a little bit on the edge of oversteer, but it's not too scary, as we saw plenty of his laps yesterday. Sailing through Degner 1, just stopping the car for Degner 2 now as well, with plenty of harvesting going on there. And the story for Ferrari yesterday was actually, whilst the drivers weren't particularly happy with the balance, the car compared to the Mercedes, who we still think is going to be the best car, once again, it's quick enough through the corners, but on the straights, they are really, really suffering. So, whilst I mentioned Piastri was half a second up on Antonelli into turn 1, Leclerc was still 2/10 up on Antonelli, so 3/10 down on the McLaren, 2/10 up on the Mercedes, but then lost a huge amount more around the rest of the lap, and that includes here, where the gulf is pretty big compared to the Mercedes.
Final squirt on the throttle. Hold on to it, because they've got so much torque, these cars. In 2026, Charles Leclerc goes top of the pile. Alex Brundle, come in and add to this conversation.
Yeah, last little chat on deployment and recharge, I think it's fair to say. But the one point which I really think it's important to understand in these free practice sections is they have all of the toys, all of the available toys, as we see Sergio Perez, I think that is, make his way across the chicane at the end of the lap. So it's been a bit of a turbulent weekend so far for Sergio Perez, hasn't it? With that bit of contact with Alex Albon early on in free practice. But in practice, they've got all of the toys, so they can choose effectively on a conscious basis or a planning basis how quickly they want to go. Qualifying, of course, you reduce the amount you're allowed to halvage over a lap to 8 megajoules. So all of the teams throughout these sessions on the performance runs, and I'm pointing slightly at McLaren here, have the choice whether they want to get their drivers confident and in and understand the car, or whether they want to simulate the amount of recharge that they're going to be allowed in qualifying. Bradley Lord of Mercedes yesterday saying they're doing exactly that. What they're doing at the moment is actually thinking forward to Q3 and asking their drivers to drive the laps in free practice with a different technique so that the energy system understands where it's going to be in Q3. So you really have a decision in these free practice sections, and we always take them with a pinch of salt as to how quick you want to look and how much confidence you want to give the driver versus how prepared you want to be when the chips are down in qualifying.
Thank you, Alex. Kimi Antonelli finishing the fastest lap of the session so far here. 7/10 of a second up on the Ferraris at one point, make that 6 by the end of the lap.
So not as quick as Carlos Sainz, who's the quickest man through the final sector. So he's 1.6 down on a set of mediums, but he's obviously had some decent deployment at the end of the lap than Sainz, because it's just the chicane, or he's skipped through the chicane that we didn't see, to be having a purple sector but be nowhere near the pace. The self-learning as well of the cars is another thing that's intense, and is another reason why drivers need to be out there on the circuit. Repeatability I mentioned earlier on. Do you remember the time Fernando Alonso in yesteryear of McLaren Honda went flat through Pouhon?
安东内利直接消掉了点6，
and he went flat,
上到了
and
第
he was
1。
like, it was the sketchiest thing he's done. The double left in the middle sector of Spa, huge commitment, did it at the end of Q3. The track grip came up, and he got punished for it by the car, thinking he was due to slow down, so it started just clipping all the way down to the Fagnes chicane, and he lost time by going essentially quicker and driving better through the corners, which is the skill of the driver. But the car got confused with what it was supposed to do. The same is true right now as well in Formula One. There have been a few occasions where, as we watch Bottas, he's not going to have another issue with someone? No?
I think he might.
He was there again, same place.
Okay, he's not helping us.
I think he was that time. I think that was a beautiful slipstream, wasn't it? What was the problem there?
This is Piastri and Hülkenberg heading into the 130R.
Looks a little bit sketchier. Yeah, it was sketchier.
Oh my god, the McLaren.
Yeah, that wasn't very nice.
All right, so I sympathise with Hülkenberg on that one, if not Bottas. That was Piastri not having a huge amount of awareness or looking in his mirrors there, and Colapinto got a warning for that with Max Verstappen yesterday, and you've got to be getting out of the way. You might be harvesting, you might be slowing down a little bit through 130R, but it's still a narrow, quick corner, and Hülkenberg does not need to be hitting the brakes there to avoid another car.
Yeah, Piastri on a prep, Hülkenberg on a push, and that is just not a part of the circuit. You want to be coming across a slower car. The elements of this year's rule set, meaning that we've got way more of an offset in speed than we would have in previous years. Russell goes into P3 on the soft tyre. Antonelli, Leclerc, Russell separated by 1/10 of a second.
勒克莱尔现在从软胎在刷，但是已经第一段就已经落后7.2了。
that he was really surprised with in China sprint qualifying, where it wasn't that he had just taken any corner flat out, but it was that he was just driving slightly differently. So the grip level was coming up. He was more aggressive on the throttle in very, very small areas, but it was just depleting bits of battery. And it meant that when he needed the battery for the big straight, which is the back straight in China, is not dissimilar really to the big one down to 130R. It's right at the end of the lap. You've basically got a big braking zone, and you get to the end of the lap with whatever you've got left. But Charles had nothing left at that point, because the nuance of his driving had just taken away that little bit of battery. So he was pushing, and then on the straight, just getting so frustrated because he's like, hang on, the grip level's come up, I've adapted to it. but now I've got nothing left because basically I've used a little bit more of the battery. So that was more in the driving rather than the self-learning of the car. But these are all things that the drivers they're having to adapt to. It's a whole new world for everyone.
Well, they are getting used to that. It's a pretty good time to bring in a trackside perspective. Luke Browning, Williams reserve driver. Tell us what you can see at turn number 1.
Hello guys. So yeah, turn 1's quite exciting down here actually. There's a few different driving techniques. It's been quite interesting panning around here to the S's too. So obviously historically, it's been very tyre limited, I guess, through the S's, but it's different to see. I think some people are holding maybe half throttle coming into the S's, and then trying to recharge some of super clipping. It's actually been one of the biggest differences been quite difficult through there, as we saw maybe in the FP1 yesterday. The Ferrari looks a little bit on the edge, as you can see. I think it's Leclerc coming through here now. He really looked like he was, hanging on to it is one way, or really pushing through there. It was quite impressive to see his car control yesterday, it really has to be said. I think it's going to be interesting going forward into this weekend, really, because FP3 we usually see some qualifying through here. And Antonelli's been super impressive too, from my perspective. But I think it's, as you say, as the qualifying grip comes up, previously you were tyre limited and you try and close up all the entries, whereas that's just not the limitation anymore. Now we're really trying to be as efficient as possible and carry that minimum speed through and get to the bottom as late as possible. So that's the main adaptation from my perspective of driving doing.
Expertly put. The first test.
喂 ，Hello， 听得到吧？
Beginning to the S's
And he had Charles Leclerc on this lap come through, so that's what Luke was describing there. The attitude of the car, seeing that he was right on the edge, driving with all his flair through that first sector, and again with a personal best, he managed to find that final tenth to depose Antonelli briefly at the top of the times, because you can see Antonelli going quicker as well in your inset picture, and Leclerc does with the best final sector.
A 1:32.29, the fastest time of the day. Arvid Lindblad missed FP2 yesterday. He slots into 6th position. As we get the runs on the softs being completed, Antonelli on pole. Last time we had a Grand Prix qualifying session, and not finding the improvement in the middle part of the lap.
But Mercedes are much quicker in the first sector, so I wonder if they've looked at what McLaren are doing and thinking, hang on, we are sacrificing way too much with this clipping down into turn 1. Let's use a little bit more juice. And Antonelli is half a second up on Hamilton through the first sector. He was 10th and a half up on Leclerc, so Lewis has still got plenty to find at the moment. You see 8/10 down on his teammate so far, but on a better lap here. So let's stay with it. Half a second down on Charles. That's mostly in the first sector there for Lewis. One big break of his own to come. Slightly different feel for it as well, as you're not approaching with your peak speed as you hit the brakes. So you are reducing speed, so you haven't got as much downforce on the car. Ironically, the peak of downforce is the moment the active aero shuts. If you see Hadjar on the left-hand side here, right in front of you now, there's your peak downforce. Active aero shuts, and now you're actually just losing downforce a little bit as the speed's dropping.
Isaac Hadjar, French driver, promoted to the senior team for his 2nd season in Formula 1. Brilliant qualifying performance in Melbourne, really disappointing time of it in China, fighting at the lower reaches of the points, contact with Kimi Antonelli in the sprint race. Also said it was disappointing day yesterday, as they're just trying to find a feel behind the wheel for both Red Bull drivers, not able to compete in the way that team has been accustomed to across the previous regulations.
So Piastri goes through 4th on a soft, and his teammate watching on, not looking like he's about to take part in this session. But Oscar, 4/10 away now in the first sector that he was so magic in yesterday, thanks to the deployment. Russell is the fastest man in the first sector, so the form guide has been flipped in the first 27 minutes of this session. Let's see if George can close out this lap. Mercedes have obviously now targeted that first sector as a weakness yesterday. Luke said it down at turn 1. A lot of people seeing that Mercedes were not as quick. That's an aggressive ride through the curbs. Catches it up in the middle, and now it's just a punchy run to the line for George.
And up to second place. Russell said yesterday it was a little surprising to see the pace of McLaren. Had no reason to doubt that it was genuine. I didn't believe they were giving Piastri a different setting that was unrepresentative. And as Jody has told you, they've done some homework. Friday into Saturday and found an improvement in the first part of the lap, and therefore an improvement across the entirety of the lap when they're using the best of their energy. Left-hand side is Paul Cletto. You're on board with the 4-time champion of the world, Max Verstappen.
Left and coast into 11. A brief super clip into Spoon curve here. Double apex corner, 13 and 14 as he sweeps around Oscar Piastri. Max not happy with just the outright level of downforce. The grip and the balance not there for him. In China, they flip the car on its head, which is what Red Bull so often have done from a sprint to a Grand Prix, and the cars come alive. Think back to Brazil last year, where he was struggling, Red Bull scratching their heads, and then he romped through the field to save a podium in the Grand Prix from the pit lane. They have got such a great track record of turning the car around, finding performance. In China, they did that, and it made no difference to the car. Yesterday, they made some sweeping changes, and it did at least change the characteristics of the car, even if they went from one end of the spectrum with a slightly pointy car that was snappy to a level of understeer that Max wasn't very happy with. Upgrades on the Red Bull as well, and all of it not giving them a huge yield in terms of lap time performance.
Let's go downstairs to Alex Brundle. He's got quite a sight of McLaren.
Edge checking in on Lando Norris, really, and giving you guys a feel for what it looks like outside the McLaren garage when the world champion doesn't get out for FP3. Look at this lot, all trying to get a view on what's going on.